friends working together with selling food in the shade. But I think the work is still there and it needs to be done. And we have some younger filmmakers here, and I would encourage you to think about telling our history, our culture, through music, architecture, literature, and so on.
So, putting me on the spot. There's something interesting that a comment that you made in the movie about Africa and Africans losing their roots. Okay, and that you said something like you can't really move forward if you're rootless. Okay. What is the solution to that? How do you find your roots if you've lost it? Is it something you never get back, or is it something that you have?
This is actually a very important question. The person who raised the question was Madame Kaba, Sarandaraba Kaba, is a pharmacist and trained. So consciousness was really raised through the Ghanaian cultural revolution. And of course, in Ghana here too, you have this expression that we see roughly as Sankofa. That is, looking back in order to look forward in many ways. And when you look at African countries, in my area, Francophone, French-speaking African countries, mostly, the modernity and the modernization that was proposed to us was a form of assimilation to French culture. And then, of course, that would have been great, except that only a minority, let's say 1% of all of Francophone Africa, really be assimilated. Then what do you do with the 99%? And then when you look at Anglophone countries, you are more ingrained as sitting in your African traditional cultures than we are, relatively speaking, because you had an indirect rule. The British were not necessarily interested in destroying your cultures and in telling you to give up on your tradition. In many aspects in my area, we were told you become French, you speak French like French people, and that's your modern culture. The French people went through that, what they call the French Revolution. And they got rid of the monarchy and they began to promote the right of the individual, universal equality, and so on. Now, how these things affected Africa is quite interesting because in my area, as I said, assimilation failed. We couldn't all become friends. And in your area, English-speaking areas, I think certain aspects of individualism was withheld from you. So we find ourselves at independent times. Suddenly we told, okay, you are African, you're no longer French. We were French. And you're no longer British. And what do we do? And this is where our tradition becomes important, and how we relate to our tradition. In my area, at least, the answer to your question, in Francophone countries, the biggest challenge has been how to see modernity without a serious inferiority complex. How to say modernity is African, tradition is African, and how do I take this with a specific African definition of African modernity. This is really what we have been trying to do. I think the same is true in Nigeria and other places. The challenge is to say you don't have to be modern, you don't have to be a Frenchman, you don't have to be a British man, but at the same time you don't have to have, to go back in the past and use things that are no longer used in many ways. So these challenges, I don't really have a real answer to them, but they are with us and how we cannot turn our back to modernity. And at the same time, tradition helps us to be confident, to be creative, to look at a machine in a way that it doesn't scare us. This is really the challenge that we have. You know, I don't have an exact answer to your question, but this is the challenge that we have. And I think it would be really good if we could make a film like this, let's say, in other cities. And I think with the sum of all those films, that will give us the answer that we're talking about here.
You know, coming from the diaspora, better known as Baptist, you know, I always am very interested that African talked about culture, and we're affected by international globalization, we keep repeating. But the religious question, you know, is a very serious question to me. Now, I heard you guys talk about our unacceptability of our own, who we are in terms of our religion. You know, I'm just totally, I turn on TV here in America. We went through the white Jesus complex thing 30 years ago. And I look on TV and I see this white Jesus, just blows my mind. I'm like, whoa, in Africa they chasing the white Jesus. You know, so I mean, I really want to know what's the psychological effect. Now, Frantz Fanon talked about white skin, black man. Okay, and I think the African is suffering from white skin, black man. They have a European wannabe. I mean, it's like watching soccer, and all I hear is Manchester and Barcelona. But you have to have self-love for yourself. Even in your film, you mentioned W.B. Du Bois. And for me as an African, I think it is so. I love W.B. Du Bois. But the first African who talked about Africa like no other was Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And for an African in the Black Star State, which was Marcus Garvey's creation, the Black Star, Nkrumah was a Garveyite. He understood what it was, the rise of Africa. And so Africans, you know, and particularly for those who talk about New York, New York came about culturally because Marcus Garvey had the Black Star ship saying we going back to Africa. So all these Africans walked.
Can you ask your question?
This is the question. That is. This is a very serious question, but it's a holistic question. Okay? Because even when you come here tonight to talk about culture, you have to have a relationship to come looking at the culture and to establish that you have a love, self-love. We're suffering from it. I understand. I'm from America. I tell you, we suffer from it. But when I come to Africa, I see this as a different suffrage. And so I think the question that Africa has to ask itself, do you love yourself?
Yeah, I think you're raising a very good question. Let me just walk through your question instead of answering. Of course, Nkrumah was a Garveyite, but Du Bois was buried in Accra here, in Ghana here. He died in Ghana here. So I think the biggest problem that we have in Africa and the United States is that we put things in this like customized situation, black, white. This situation of opposition, this situation of those who know and those who don't know and therefore they are stupid. This situation of those who are awakened and they are civilized, they know Africa, and those who do not know Africa. But when you look at the average African, and I'm with you, a religion is the fundamentalist, the evangelical churches, they are very powerful in Africa. But so look, the reason is not what you raise. They're powerful because African politics fails, and people are looking for solutions. And they go wherever they can find a solution. That's really why they're powerful. It's not powerful because Africans do not know because they lost. Africans know where they're going. Well, let me answer the question. I mean, if I don't answer the question, it's not going to. If you only look at 50 years, you don't understand America. That's the problem.
Culturally, technologically, America was 6 years after this system. Education.
Look, brother, I understand, but as long as we take each other as I know and you don't know, I'm smart and you are stupid, we're not going to find an answer.
It's a base. I see God as a base. Let's reach down and speak here. It's still growing the same. But I hear trying to imply into America like a base.
You know, I really, look, on the one hand, I really feel what you say. But on the other hand, I'm just trying to tell you that people are not as, naive as you think they are. That's all I'm trying to tell you here. And that in relation to the church is not as naive as you think it is. I'm a former Muslim. My culture is Islam. So I understand you. Let's just put this way. You're right. The lady wants to speak.
Okay. Thank you very much for your It highlighted something to me. Your film mentioned 24 mentioned number, action, war, didn't mention Martin Garvey. I'm from Jamaica, so I'm a Garvey too. Okay. But one of the things that I want to ask, there's more questions I want to ask. We had all those revolutions in those days. They are who inspired me to be in Africa now. I'm coming from Jamaica. I live here, and I am coming back to my roots. Okay? Now, what I want to ask you is that who are our revolutionaries now? We've got activists, but as Mr. Balafante said, the minute you start going out of the parameters of what is acceptable, you are classified and you are closed down. So we've got activists, but who are the revolutionaries who will stand out there and say, yes, we are Africans and we've got to fight for that cause? The second question I want to ask, Mrs. Madame Kaba talked about we need to have dialogue in relation to have African unity. I think we need more than dialogue. We need to go and visit the AU Constitution, because that is what divided Africa. And until we revisit that and start looking at unifying Africa through all the countries and, stop this self-fulfilling leaders rather than, having a unity. We need to go to the Constitution rather than dialogue is not enough. Okay, what do you think?
Well, on the question of revolution, I think I agree with you. Who are revolutionaries today? I think that what is happening is that in the 60s, the subject of revolution was one thing. And then, roughly, with the Cold War, the involvement of CIA, the involvement of French secret agents, and so on, the revolution failed everywhere in Africa. I mean, I'm not teaching anybody by saying that. And then we went through a long moment of what we call Afro-Pessimism. People lost faith in it. And I think many people today think that there are new revolution taking place, and I'm not only talking about Tunisia, Egypt, the changes in Africa. I'm not only talking about that, but Africans more and more are tired of being told what to do. Are tired of saying they don't have jobs. The majority of the people don't have jobs. The majority of the people complain about not having jobs. Go to jail. The majority of the people have low they really have no voice in what is happening in the government of Africa, which leads to the weakness of the African Union in many ways. I think that the revolution today, again, I'm a cultural person. I think we have a lot of revolution taking place in the culture, in the music, there is revolution taking place. I think the musicians are telling us where we should be going. In literature, they're telling us, they have been talking. And in many ways, Africa is changing, whether we want to see it or not. Africa is changing a lot. And I have been traveling in Africa, doing research. Basically, I went to the United States. I couldn't afford to travel to Africa for a long time. But since 1985, I've been traveling everywhere in Africa. And believe me, things have changed a lot. The fact that you are in Ghana from Jamaica and you can talk and you can raise the question that you are raising, it's changed. You used to go to jail for saying that in Ghana. You used to go to jail for saying that in Mali. You used to go to jail for saying that in any place in Africa. For basically saying I'm black, I have rights. So things are changing tremendously in Africa. We don't see, or maybe we're so used to criticizing it that we don't see. But if you really travel in Africa, the changes that you see. For example, you have this image of Nigeria. You can't even travel there when you look at the stereotype. But I was in Nigeria in February, in Ikoyi. It's full of espresso places. It's full of, I went I bought at a place called Signature Gallery, and I take it to New York. Everybody wants to know who the artist is, and this is somebody unknown. So revolution is taking place in that underground, and people who can see honestly. The revolution is no longer tied to Fela. No longer tied to Sankara or to go back to Nkrumah. There are new revolutions, and I'm just begging you to look for those moments of revolution. They're no longer global. They're no longer, sorry, my good friend Yuskas is dead. They're no longer televised or whatever, to paraphrase that. So when it comes to OAU, I think you have a very important point that you raised about OAU. But OAU is not going to be efficient as long as we have these nation states that are not biased that we have today. My country, Mali, is a small country. But OAU needs to maintain Mali as a nation for voting rights in the UN, for relations with France to get home, and so on. So, honestly, my opinion, my last editorial said that Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina should be the same country. They really should be. Because they're the same people, they have the same industry. But if you have Ghana, it's not going to go far. So OAU is really, there because Europe needs it, IMF needs it, World Bank needs it. But I don't think too much into it. So you want to explain that?
Yeah.
No, it was, you have a return. When we talk about this sort of African unity, or unifying Africa, and government doing that, the reality is that government will never do it. The politicians will never. However, I think that there is hope. Because in many ways we can transcend the politics. Okay, we can transcend it through culture, through sort of the things that we've seen today, through art, through sport, through friendship, through business and entrepreneurship. And these things, as we go along, I think we will begin to find more and more that governments are less and less significant. You talked about the reason why the church is so popular is because governments have failed. That's probably correct. And maybe it's not such a bad thing that governments are failing, because collectively we are taking our own destiny into our own hands. The truth about contemporary Africa is that the reality of it is that Europe needs Africa today more than Africa needs Europe, frankly. And I think that this trend will continue. The raw materials here, the energy is here, the young people are here, and I think that we will see, and we're beginning to see, a situation where there is a rise in Africa, and I think that this trend really continues on for a while.
I witnessed that rise today. I spent a good portion of the day in a conference with young people who were web developers, web designers, and I'm always amazed. I'm always the oldest one there. I'm always one of maybe 7 women, but we're getting there now. But you asked the question, where are the revolutionaries? They were in that movement from the back. And I invariably walk in with African outfits because I always remind them they need African solutions to all the things they're doing. And they're doing it. And one of the areas that I've seen that has helped our young people in Ghana get jobs is these young people embracing ICT, information communication technology. There is a question here. I did not see that in your film. I did not see the young people there embracing information communication technology. More or less, they were embracing, well, I saw the mechanic shop and the apprenticeship, them going to the shop and getting jobs. Which is naturally African. You know, people say we don't have maintenance culture, but we really do. We just don't do it as efficiently as we need to. We are generally recyclers. We use things over and over and over and over again. So my question to you is, how come I didn't see that particular embracing of what it is now, a real global phenomenon in Ghana and in other parts? Thank you.
You know, that's my failure basically in the film. I mean, that's fairly great. The film was made in 2002. I went to Conakry in 2002, and it didn't see issues of technological development. That's completely my failure. But it also raises another question. Many people are saying, how come this social media succeed in catching on in Egypt and Tunisia, and it's not catching on in sub-Saharan Africa? I don't have a real answer to this question, but as far as the film is concerned, I completely take responsibility. I'm not that literate in social media myself, and in 2000 I just did not know that much. I had my computer and my email and no more than that. Yeah, that's my way.
I have a question, a bit of a comment. I really liked Madam Kaba. I thought a lot of the stuff that she said and a lot of people said really true. But just to quickly say about the revolution, I think there is a revolution, and it's very quiet, and it is people like us who are coming back. A long time ago, when I used to say I was going to come back to live in Ghana, everybody thought I was mad. I turned around and everybody else had moved back to Ghana before me. You know, it's happening, we're all coming back. We're not seeing the gold in the places we were born. We're seeing it back at home. But what I wanted to say about Madame Cabaret, when she said about women and talking, I actually thought it was very interesting, because I think in intellectual circles where people get aeroplanes everywhere, they think that Africa is very, very separated from itself. But I know from the first time I went to Peskaka was the first time I travelled inland by bus, And what you see are people, women, doing business across borders. And I went, for mad reason, I had to go from Togo, by bus to Burkina, and then I went to Mali, and then I went to Senegal, and all the way back again, all by public transport. And there are loads and loads of women who know nothing about government saying you cannot do business across borders. They do it every single day. And I think, in a way, the intelligentsia in us between a lot of us newbies have to kind of come down off our pedestal and meet Africa where it actually is, instead of thinking we have the answers because we know how to do it in the UK. That's all we know, is how to do it somewhere else. We don't know how to do it here. We don't know how it's being done here because we're so blinkered. We don't look at the successes that are happening here. And if you stop speaking English and you start speaking the local language, you meet a whole different Africa, Ghana, wherever it is that you are. And I don't have a question, sorry.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Mr. here and sponsors for introduction. My points are, I have a question and then I have a comment. When you talk about the need for Guinea, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Ivory Coast probability ranked as a necessary step towards progress and development. The question I would like to answer later on. The second point is this. I'm a Nigerian. We are 150 million plus in Nigeria. And when you combine Ghana, Guinea, Gambia, Sierra Leone, they don't even come anywhere close to Nigeria. And yet, we have huge problems in Nigeria. I'm not ashamed to say, if the Jews were not afraid to write about their enslavement in Egypt, cannot be ashamed to discuss the real problems facing us in Nigeria. Ghana is a small country. I'm in Ghana here today because my wife is pursuing her medical studies at the University of Ghana. We are here enjoying uninterrupted hours of life. These are doctrines in Nigeria. So I want you to think again and answer the question, which is, must these countries unite to become huge mammoths in order to succeed, where Nigeria hasn't succeeded? Then the other issue I want to point out is the sensitive issue of culture and tradition as concerns Africa. Oftentimes, black people like to hide behind the concept of culture and tradition to absolve themselves of the blame for lack of progress. And I think, I'm convinced that culture and tradition are two different things. Tradition is the way our ancestors did things. Culture is the way we live. So when we talk about culture now, this microphone I'm holding here is part of our present-day culture. That is fact. Secondly, oftentimes people talk about civilization as Western civilization, or European, being European, or being American, or being white. Now, another question I want to ask with respect to this is this. I'm giving you information now. Christianity came to Germany, in particular, in the year 800 AD. Before that time, Germany was an animist nation. They worshipped gods of thunder. They were polygamous. They had practically similar cultures as we have here in sub-Saharan Africa. So, as long as black people continue to hold on to past traditions, the way our ancestors lived 5,000 years ago, I don't see us making any progress. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, just very quickly, the last point is, I agree with your first point. I agree with definitely culture and tradition. Completely, no problem. Culture is a way of life, period. Whereas tradition, as you said, is something that you can go back to, but you can also relate to the present. I don't believe that there is a one-to-one relation between what Germany used to be in the 18th century and what Africa is today. I think that's one. You know, you said it, I mean, Japanese are fairly well developed. They're not Christian. Chinese are well developed. They're not Christian. So it's to assume that because Germany was atheistic, whatever you call it, and then Africa was there, I don't agree with that part.
But you said your culture is Islam. Islam is not African culture.
No, I'm not talking about the religion that are African or not. For me, Christianity is African, and for me, Islam is African.
But they're not.
Well, yeah, no, but that's just a matter of difference. That's different. It's a way of life. And, I mean, Islam, I think, no, let's not get into religion. I'm not a specialist, and I don't think you are a specialist. That's not getting into it. But all I'm trying to say is that I don't think it's correct to see Africa in the middle of 18th century Germany. That's all I'm saying. That doesn't make much sense. Other than that, I agree with you in what you say. Yes, that's all I'm saying. That Germany is what Germany was, and what the whole Protestant ethics is that, the Weberian sociology, that's one thing, and Africa is what Africa is, and Japan is what Japan is, and so we don't all have the same model of development. That's all I'm trying to say.
The issue of unity of African coalition.
You know, okay, let's agree to disagree on that. I think that Nigeria is the only meaningful country in West Africa. At the end of the day, regardless of all the chaos, regardless of whatever you say, at the end of the day, the countries that will make Barack Obama address Africa and take Africa seriously, but not patronize us like the Ghana come from people like the Nigerian energy. And if you bring Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina, those are the countries that I mentioned. Each one has Sierra Leone at big glass. Then you have diamonds, you have cocoa, you have oil. Barack Obama will start taking it seriously right away. Because it's about interest. It's not about small is beautiful, small countries can organize. No, small countries are organized so they can exploit them better. And that's becoming more and more difficult in Nigeria. And therefore, they will create chaos in Nigeria. But I think the Nigerian model is going to be more and more the model for Africa. If we don't have a choice, like in Nigeria, they didn't have a choice in the 80s, then they begin to create their own models of this. They begin to rely on themselves. So that again, we just agree to disagree. You prefer the Ghanaian model. I prefer the Nigerian model of Africa. I want us to be big and chaotic and everybody.
Good evening. I have two questions. One, did you think to speak to Ahmed Sekou-Touré's wife or anyone in his family about what they think what's happening currently? And two, the youth, did you talk to them about what they think about Sekou-Touré and socialism, between socialism and capitalism, and what they think should be the right path for any application?
The first question, I wrote a book on Guinea in 1996, and I talked to Sekou-Touré family minister because I wanted to show the different Sekou-Touré in the imaginary of Africa. For the film, I didn't think first she was based in Senegal, in Dakar, that's where she is. I didn't think that it would add to the film because I didn't want this. I couldn't escape the personal calls, but I didn't want it to belong to this party. I thought that this belong to us. That's one question about the what you say about the that's the answer to the two questions about revolution today and Africa today. Young people are way ahead of us. The way they're thinking, and I mean, even in the U.S., we have this notion that young people are lost.
Nope.
They are more pragmatic. They figure out, they're not, they're more confident than we are. My model, I was literal, and I'm not trying to romanticize it. I was literally touched by the situation. But if you want to use tribe or ethnic group, we do trade. We have the people who are the sans-papiers in France. We don't go to school because we don't believe in European system of school. But they literally came to Canada and literally said, what are these kids doing in this? And pushed us in a room and transformed it. So, for me, my way of thinking was shaped by this first modernized way, as this way, Kwame Nkrumah, Senghor, yes, brother, Martin Garvey. The young people are not there. And it doesn't mean that they lost, whether they are in the U.S. or here. It doesn't mean that they lost. It means that they have different ways of internalizing these things and bringing out something new. I really think that's what's happening. And socialism and capitalism are not even things that they think about. In their daily thoughts, they don't think about that. In their daily thoughts, they want to know how to make it. And also, race relations completely different to the young people than it is. I write a lot on black image, and my son always laughs at me. Dad, what's wrong with this? What do you think to do? So they're in a different world, and our biggest mistake is to think that they are alienated and that they're wrong. Because they're so proud of us. That's what's crazy about it. Your sons and daughters are proud of you, but they want to do something else. And we don't seem to realize that, and we don't seem to give that credit. The young lady, then we come back to Robert.
Excuse me, sir. I got the mic.
Get him right. And then we come to you.
Please tell us who you are and your age, please. I know you.
Oh, it's the mic. I bring you my mic. Oh, I'm sorry.
My name is Stephanie Richard, and I'm 15 years old. Beginning slightly from the current topic of our opinions of globalization and Africa's status among the world, I wanted to ask about the movie nation process. And there are a lot of different opinions on the ecology and the way culture has been developed. And I wanted to ask you how you could discriminate between which opinions you wanted to demonstrate and whether you found yourself falling in favor when arguing over.
You're right. In Conakry, for example, we have 70 hours of this, and you saw 70 minutes. It's like start 1,000 races. People can do that now because it's video. They couldn't do that with the 60mm or the 35mm. And then, so that was one challenge. And so first of all, you have to cut out everything where the sound is bad, But when you do, after you do all of that, your question becomes very important. How do you discriminate? What do you keep in the film and what do you keep out? And I was even more constrained because I was getting nostalgic about it. And my editor saying, well, you can leave this in the film like we're meeting your friend talking about African art and math, but it really doesn't add much to this film. It makes it too long. And I said, I'm going to keep it there. And things like that. Or I may have gone too long with the music. You know, as if this was a kind of Bona Vista or something. You know, I may have gone too long with it. But that is from my understanding. I'm trying to explain what motivates me to make a film like this. And the editor also, in the discrimination, this is important. The editor is telling me to have a voice-over narrative. That is, take the spectator by the hand, tell them what you're doing. And I was against that. You know, usually I just make the film and let the film speak for itself, and usually it fails. You know, so the editor is telling me, so tell us what you're doing here. I'm an American, I like these images, I like the music, but I don't know, I don't understand what you're doing, what it's all about. You know, what Big Genie by the guy who may have been a dictator, I don't know him, and socialism, you know, what is Big Genie? So I have to explain this film and so on. So these were some of the important aspects of the discrimination in the film. What images to get in and what images to leave out. Harry Belafonte alone, I had about 5 hours. You know, but an editor right away, Harry had kind of throat cancer. His voice is really difficult to follow sometimes. But I love him, so I put him, and the editors don't care. Editors don't even understand you. What's the point? Sure. Keeping him in the film, you know, because it's about film language here, you know. Yes, he's going, yes, he died better on the film, we can't understand him. What's the point? So these are some of the elements you know, that are very constraining in making a film like this. First, nostalgic. I'm not 58, I was about 55-year-old then, 54, and I'm trying to put on the screen all my nostalgia. So I have my own problems that I have to put on the screen. And the editor is telling me, please don't exaggerate and so on. And you know, that's what filmmaking is also about, you know, being confident, taking courage. Yeah. But I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Good evening. First, I want to say thank you. Wonderful. I wanted to, they're not really questions, but like 3 different points that maybe you can expound on them. The first one is regarding African politics film. And when I heard that I heard it said more than once, the idea that comes to mind for me is that African politics haven't failed us because we really haven't exercised African politics in this era, in this time. We've exercised European politics, which never were designed for us to succeed. They were by colonizers and enslavers. So until we decide to come upon creativity to develop political structures that work for us and a political attitude that works for us, then we don't have anything that we're working with except failure from the start. And the second point, with regard to education, there's always a push for education. I'm a mother of 3 sons, so I'll see my son in college. And yeah, we all push for education, but I think it's really important for us to, at the same time, simultaneously, as we push for education, we push for educational content that's in our favor. So we don't continue like in Ghana to graduate scholars, like in the United States, we graduate black scholars, and we still don't have black farmers. You know what I'm saying? Not to the extent of the college graduates that we have. And the third point.
We say you have a black president. What else do you want?
Well, I would actually question that. You know that. Our black president or who's black president? Okay, the third thing is just for us to always remember that we're on the same side. And as an African American here in Ghana, from the very first time that I took the science here in Ghana, you know, I had someone stand up and say, "Oh, you're African American, thank you, da 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 da." So, you know, I found myself that I go to a lot of political meetings and political discussions, and what I see, like I saw a little while ago with you and the brother here, we're oftentimes speaking on the exact same time. we're so busy thinking that we're not on the same side, that we're speaking without hearing each other. So I just wanted to share the importance of that point. And also I wanted to mention, with regard to the political statement, educational content, that I think one of our greatest issues is it's like a dissipation or like a breakdown of our ability to be creative and have vision for ourselves. Our ideas of ourselves and our future is inside a box that was designed and drawn by someone else. So it's important, like what you're doing, that we do things that help ignite the vision of our people so that we can create whatever we need, whatever reality we want to create. Thank you.
Right. Let's thank the brother.
You're supposed to introduce yourself and your age and all this sort of thing. I'll skip all that. I'm an observer and listener to the film and talk and questions. But one thing I want to make a few comments and ask you one question. The comments I want to sort of make starts with, what are we all aspiring for in this world? Globalization, colonization, individuality, or what is the aim? What are we trying to drive? Since recorded history was introduced, there has never been peace among human beings. No matter whether you are a man and wife, a family, a nation, or whatever it is. So what are we trying to sort of arrive at to make a peaceful world? There will never ever be peace in this world, so long as there are different societies, different ideas, and different people. There will never be. One lady earlier on said, dialogue is the key to harmony in this world. And I believe it. Those who don't believe it, please think about it. Dialogue is the only way we can, exist or coexist. Secondly, I have a very good relation. That is my daughter has written a book called White Paper, Black Marks. If anybody can lay a hand on that, it will be a very interesting reading. I didn't sort of read it until much, much later in my school. The third point I want to make, why do we consider ourselves on the same model as those who profess to be the forerunners or the judges of what life should be? In other words, why do we try to model ourselves on what other people do? And in this context, I would say the white race. Africans, if we want to identify ourselves being African, then we should forget about what goes on in the wide world and try to aspire to that. In order to give us credibility, we should be able to develop our own institutions of which we are proud of, no matter what anybody says. But so long as we compare ourselves to others of the white race, we will never ever finish that race. Therefore, my question is that Why do we do all these things? To prove that we are equal to anybody. I mean, a villager is as happy as somebody who is sitting down in Buckingham Palace or the White House. Why do we want to change it? We are proud. If polygamy is something that the white or other societies prohibit and call it immoral, let's face it and be proud of being polygamous. Why do we have to apologize? Why do we have to defend it? Please, it's about time that I feel that we go into our own self and be whatever we are. No matter how anybody decries it, no matter how anybody degrades it, it is ours. Let's keep it that way.
I like that Ghanaian confidence. Then we definitely will go to you.
My name is Charles. I changed it to my family because every time I flew, I was told
Get the camera.
and every time I flew, I had all kinds of annoying issues. Then I was fine. Why should it be happening? I had to keep happening. 27 years. People are now experiencing this. People like TSA. I laugh. Not because it's funny, but because you've never had a question. Why should it be done? Why should it be done? Whether you're black or white. One time I was going through and a white boy was just behind me. He didn't know me. He saw me eating fish and he started laughing. And the officer pulled him aside, put him through the same thing. And he was shocked. We sat down, and I was 3 hours in, went to like a local thing. Why do you have to change it? Sometimes when you change it to help you understand what's going on.
Try to summarize.
I will. Now, you have a lot of material which you weren't able to put out because of certain technological limitations. My era, we don't have those. We take that information and post it online.
You want to
Without
the lady's question.
Right. So the technology is enabling us, my age group, to do the things which your age group is not able to do, and we are also able to net like this, communicate these things. Literally instantaneously. It is streaming. Yes, this is the old school, and this might be the new school. Tomorrow it might be different. But it's the beginning of a means of communication. And what I wanted to ask you is, what do you think you're willing to do in terms of taking that information and distributing it? Because I see what you've done is very useful. Would you be willing to put all this information in the storm so that everybody can see it? Because what you have done is really wonderful. But it has to be seen by everybody. And they need to be able to react to it, interact with it, pass it on, cut it up. Then it's in the pieces that they like for others to discuss. 70 hours is a lot of information. I have about 500 gigs of data, and I've been finding people to give different pieces of data I've been collecting over the last 6 years. Find someone in a certain industry and give to them. I really think you need to start thinking about doing it. Social media is connecting. We are community. We are organized. There's a thing. We live by the sword, we die by the sword. I see what's happening in places like this. I see what you're doing. It is pointing out that dialogue is needed. Otherwise, restless things happen.
Good. Thank you.
Hello. I just want to make just a short
Do you have a card?
note. I hear one of the speakers saying that the white or black Africans, and let's say Africans, we don't is white. I want to make a correction here. I can remember when Kofi Annan he came to Europe, and he did say something there, that Africans need Western world, and the Western world need Africans. That means the two of us, the two bodies, have to become one. One. The way how we think for as an African is different from what the Western world. Like let's put it from faith. Like when if someone is working for me here as an African, I always wanted to bring him down. Like I want to subdue him. I don't want him to come to a level that he can be successful. But with the Western world, you don't think that. They want them also to rise at the same level. If you take all Africans to the Western world and you bring the Western world to here, they'll still go there and complain that no, that's why it's not good for them. So the way we would think is different. We need more education. We need to educate our people. That's a fact. If we can do that, then we won't have the problem. The whole continent, Africa is the best. But why always we suffering, calling for aid in Africa? We have all the mineral resources in Africa, but we still go on begging. Why? Our leaders are corrupt. So let's see what we can do. By doing so, we should educate our people. Secondly, my next question is that when Africans travel outside there, the way we see us here, the way we do our things here, gossip, biting and everything, it's not the same attitude over there. But white, they don't do that. I've worked with white, but the way they do that is quite different. Quite different. So what I'm trying to say is that we should. Those who you have traveled, you said I hear you, I listen to you. You said you've been in the U.S., you've been in other parts of the country. What you have learned, what you have seen, let's impart those kind of ideas into our brethren here. Let's tell them that look, the way we do our things here is quite different there. Because if you go and meet a minister will tell you, if I give this, I want to take 30% off. We don't have money. We need pre-finance. You bring your money to do what the government needs. But at the end of the day, you won't get your money paid. So are you moving forward or what? So the way we think is different. So what can we do as an African? Thank you.
I've heard you make statements this evening about I heard people make statements that the revolution failed. But if the revolution failed, you wouldn't have a Ghana, you wouldn't have a Guinea, you wouldn't have all these African independent countries that you had prior to 1957. So I could not imagine in America people saying George Washington, the revolutionary, failed. No, George Washington, the revolutionary, succeeded. That's why there's the United States of America. So for the people of Africa to keep saying their founding fathers failed makes me back to what I said, when you don't love yourself. This is a serious situation. I've been in Africa several times. It's not my first time in Africa. I first embraced Ghana in 1966 when I found out about the Ashanti Nation. I was 13 years old. And I read about, they got an Ashanti Nation in Africa. I'm all about Ashanti. Even though I was bigger than every Ashanti I ever met. But that was cool, all right. My thing about this is that Africa has, and I don't speak Africa like I ain't part of it. And that's why I mentioned Marcus Garvey, because over 100 years prior to Du Bois, Marcus Garvey was telling what the African needs to do. Organization of African Unity is the creation I want to share this with you because I think it's important. Because I've been hearing these discussions, and the African unity question was something Marcus Garvey created and discussed how the whole of Africa needs to come back like Ethiopia was and become a free, independent thinking. What do I tell my African children? That was one of Marcus Garvey's things. He said 1970. And so I think that we have to start, loving ourselves. I think one of the problems in Africans, they think that they failed. Yeah, we're on hard times in Africa after 40, 50 years of independence. And the knees are scratched up, and it's rough. But I tell people, again, you talk about America, but if you ever study the history of America, 50 years after America, it was rough. People didn't take baths on a regular basis. It was a wild, 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 wild. Come on now. So we got to start thinking that there's a growth development part of Africa that's taking place. Africa is a baby. South Africa just received its independence 20 years ago. Ghana is running at 60 years. So, I mean, they've not made 100 years. I think that Africa is in a great place. It has embraced itself and loved itself more. I heard somebody say, never, never will Africa be united. They said it never been African American. I'm from Chicago. Obama was one of my creations from a political standpoint because I was a political thinker. We created young people like Obama. Okay, and so I just think that you have to be more visionary. When they told us what we could do in America, we did. A black woman made the heater that warms our house today. Who would know a black woman did that? You would have a boiler if it wasn't for a black woman. So I think you got to understand that there's a lot of growth and development left in Africa. And I think that the key people who say that your country just failed, no, you've not failed. You just scratched your knee. Stop crying.
Yes. I think this is where Joe. As long as this Joe gets here. But I honestly don't. I mean, the sister there says that we seem like we have the clean. But we talking about the same thing. It's really, I think we take that seriously. Yeah, we really are not in disagreement. Okay.
That's a good note to end the night. It's been quite long, but that was a lively discussion. And we'd really like to thank Nantia. I was reading earlier about a theory of globalization that is a two-way street, that it's a globalization of Africa as well as Africanization of the global. And it depends on what extent you agree with that statement, but there's no doubt that Nantia's stories, the African stories that he's telling and the stories of our cities contribute to the latter. We'd like to thank you so much for coming tonight, coming all the way from New York. Our film series is every other month for the rest of the year, so we hope you'll join us. On the 16th of June, we're having the Environmental Film Festival launch with Dr. Pesu here, and there are going to be a lot of exciting angles that are going to be taken from fashion, music, from film, and literature. So I hope to join us on the 16th of June here at the Golden Tulip. Once again, thanks for coming out tonight.
Thanks, Mei Ling.